Yeah, yeah. And if you can stand naked in front of your master, you can stand naked in front of your God.
A bunch of people just dancing around on warm beaches, wearing swimsuits, exercising and being emotionally vulnerable with each other while having a group therapy session. That's what it looks like, right? Well, nopes. You couldn't be more wrong. This footage isn't from some fun weekend beach getaway or anything. It belongs to filmmaker Will Allen, which he took himself while he was staying in Southern California with hundreds of other people, all belonging to a secret cult known as Buddhafield.
You could only comprehend what this means, to finally have God being revealed to you in its purest form. Finally!
Started by a struggling actor called Jamie Simone Gomez in Los Angeles Buddhafield, to most people in and around it, was just another spiritual gathering with Jamie as a teacher, spiritual leader, and a guru who was just helping people through the difficult paths of their respective lives. However, with years passing by, more and more horrific revelations were made. On January 25th, 2016, a documentary called Holy Hell was released during the annual Sundance Film Festival. Now, this wasn't any normal documentary. In fact, before its release, no information was given about its makers or what it was about. No one had any idea what they were about to watch. So when thousands of people present in the theater, most of whom had lived in California for years, started watching the film, every single second of the 103 minutes of Holy Hell horrified them with disturbing details that the filmmaker Will Allen had filmed himself while being an integral part of Buddhafield for 22 long years.
It chronicles my 20-year experience and my friend's 20 years of experience with our spiritual teacher that we had in the 80s, 90s, and the years 2000. It was almost 3 decades. We were all this very secret group. And it's trying to chronicle that whole experience over 20 years.
In the 60s, when the cinema was rising to its new heights, a young man belonging to a wealthy Venezuelan family moved to LA with a dream of becoming a movie star. The name was quickly changed from Jamie Gomez to Michel Rostand, a practice that's fairly common in Hollywood, and the struggle to land a film role began. In 1968, he landed a small role in Roman Polanski's cult classic Rosemary's Baby. However, this role couldn't bring any further success in his acting career. For some time, he even participated in Oakland Ballet, and after some more struggle, his career was shifted to gay pornography. When his acting career couldn't take off, Michael reinvented himself as a spiritual guru who would help people let go of their worldly problems and get in touch with their soul. He began by organizing weekly yoga sessions, a phenomenon that was gaining more and more following in America, and especially LA. Soon, the yoga sessions changed into meditation exercises, and more people started joining him, and eventually, the group had 100 members in it. This was the time when the word Buddhafield started getting associated with the group. In 1985, Will Allen was introduced to Michael because of some trouble at home. Will, who was 22 at that time and a film student, had come out as gay to his parents, and as a result, his mother forced him to leave the family home. Will's sister, who was already hanging out with people from Buddhafield for the last 9 months, invited him to join this secretive community. Now, as a young gay man who was shunned by society, Buddhafield seemed perfect to Will. A place full of like-minded and fit young people, many of whom were homosexuals and free to think and live their lives at their own will. Buddhafield was certainly the place to be. Think about it for a moment. You are a gay man, and with the AIDS epidemic on rise, religious landscape, and church-going parents in the 80s, things just aren't going right for you. Suddenly, you are introduced to Michel, a fit man wearing nothing but a Speedo and some eyeliner. With his mysterious and charismatic personality, he tells you that it's okay to be the way you are. Obviously, you are going to be drawn towards him and his group.
If you think of tomorrow, you are unhappy. If you think of the past, you can become miserable. And happiness is wherever you are. Wherever you are is where happiness is.
Because of being a graduate of film school and knowing stuff about cameras and filming, Will quickly became the group's documentarian and thus close to Michelle, and for the next 22 years he continued to film most of the activities that happened in the Buddhafield. Beliefs and rules. Like most cults, Buddhafield had its own beliefs and rules. It was largely based on New Age ideas, where the leader portrayed himself as a spiritual guru. Attracted to these ideas of self-fulfillment and healing, newcomers readily gave themselves over to Buddhafield. By most of the followers, Michael was called the teacher, and they would immediately change their name after becoming part of the group. The Sanskrit word Shakti was used for a practice where Michael would allegedly transfer his power and spirituality to his troubled followers through his finger.
Shakti is the transference of energy from the master to the disciple. We'd just leave there so blissed out and high, without drugs.
Most of the people after joining the group would move in together and completely cut off their families. Some of them continued to maintain their low-end jobs, but it was just to pay the rent. Other than that, they would rarely communicate with anyone outside of this group. After every 2 to 3 days, a 3 to 5 hour-long ballet practice was conducted, and everyone had to participate in it. Though the group believed in living freely, there were some rules that had to be followed. For example, Michelle demanded that in order to be part of the Buddhafield, you must remain celibate. In addition to this, alcohol, drugs, and other worldly pleasures were banned for the group members. In 1992, the group moved from LA to Austin, Texas. The 1993 Waco siege is often described as some sort of personality-changing event in Michael's life. According to Will, he became very paranoid after this, and for 6 months he left his followers behind in order to search for a new location for Buddhafield. In 1993, the Buddhafield moved to Oahu, Hawaii, and that is when the things became even more intense. The shift.
It shifted to guru worship. Slowly but surely kept going in that angle. So now, rather than meditating on love or whatever your particular thing was, now you're supposed to visualize the guru. And now it's the guru's grace that you're having all these incredible meditation experiences. And there were a lot of us that had been there and watched that shift that were sort of, what's going on here? This is different than what it was.
Michael, who was a guru or teacher, till now started thinking of himself more as a godly personality. In his eyes, he was something more than a human now, and he wanted his followers to think the same. The group that had started with meditation had taken a sharp turn towards worship, and it was Michelle who had the center stage in all this. For Michelle, it had all come down to the fact that now he had a strange power over these 100+ young individuals, and he was certainly loving it. With time, this power kept on increasing, and the fact that Michelle was a hypnotist made it a lot easier for him to take over the minds of these young and extremely vulnerable individuals.
So the teacher was a hypnotherapist, and he would invite me in for therapy, which he called cleansing. And he charged people $50 a session.
We all had therapy every week.
In regression hypnotherapy, you try to go back to trauma, relive it, and then change it so that they are empowered.
Slowly, the things started getting even worse when Michelle began taking complete control of the lives of these individuals. According to some former members, one time when a group member's father died, Michelle didn't let her go visit her family.
So my father, who I was very close to, was dying. He told me that I couldn't go see him. This is so you break the bond with him. And I would make airline reservations, cry and cry and cry, and then I would cancel them.
One other time, he forced another member to get an abortion for some religious reasons. In various interviews, some of the group members have revealed that Michelle would first ask them to share what was going on in their minds during his weekly hypnotherapy sessions, and then use these confessions against them whenever they wished to leave. Similarly, he used the ongoing AIDS crisis during that time to scare his gay followers and frightening them into staying. He was also known to forcefully suggest plastic surgery and extremely strict diets to his devotees in order to look younger and more attractive. Soon, a practice called groupthink was introduced to the followers of Buddhafield, a practice where the members of a group were brainwashed into believing the same things that Michel believed in. In an interview given by one of the former members, he described this practice as, "It was methodical. Every day we were being reprogrammed. It was brainwashing because we had groupthink as well. Groupthink is where we all just keep supporting the same thought. If you thought outside of that, it was criticized, of course, and it was not the way to enlightenment. But this certainly wasn't the worst part about Buddhafield by far. Rape and abuse.
Yeah, sure. And they just keep you because they don't care. You know, you're just a sack of meat to this person. That's when I began to hate him.
During all those years of Buddhafield, Michael had always been keen to have more and more young and attractive devotees in the group. With him getting more and more power over his followers, another practice that he started was forcing his several followers to be naked in front of him. Yep. I know this sounds extremely weird, and believe me, it is, but Michel had ways to make all the members see the reason behind this practice. According to him, if you can't stand naked in front of your master, you can't stand naked in front of your God.
And if you can't stand naked in front of your master, you can't stand naked in front of your God. Know that.
Now, the group members who at that time were blinded by all the brainwashing and promises of spirituality didn't even realize that their guru had turned into a sexual predator. Or maybe he had always been one.
He was, and none of us knew it until it all exploded outwardly. And again, most of the people that were around him were so young and naive and trusting, and nobody knew everything that was going on all at once.
In the late 90s and early 20s, more and more people started leaving the group, and with this, the revelations of sexual assault started coming to surface. According to many former members, Michel, who had enforced strict celibacy in his group, would often engage in sexual relations with his followers, who most of the time were young men in their 20s. Sometimes he would disguise these relations as a source for his followers to get even higher on the spiritual ladder, while other times it was straight up rape and abuse.
I resisted, and I didn't want to be with him, and I would cry sometimes, and he would say, okay, let's go down a long flight of stairs, let's go back to your childhood. Who is it that you're resisting? And I'd be like, I'm resisting you, I don't want to have sex with you. He's like, no, let's go back to your childhood when somebody wanted you to do something and you didn't want to do it. He was a master, he was masterful at getting what he wanted.
In 2006, after a lot of people had come forward about the abuse at the hands of the teacher Will, decided to leave Buddhafield for good. But he wasn't done with Michel, not yet. Making of Holy Hell. Will, after leaving the cult, had no idea what to do with his life, as for 22 years, he was practically in sort of an isolation with about 150 members, and Michael. After some time, he started meeting with other people who had left the group, and this is when he began to realize that almost all of them had been subjected to sexual abuse by Michael. This is when Will realized that Buddhafield wasn't a spiritual, religious, yoga, or meditation group. It was an extremely secretive sexual cult where the leader, Michael Rostand, was abusing his hundreds of followers. This is when Will realized that he still had the footage he had recorded over his 22 years in the group, and he could use it to make something that would tell the world about the reality of Buddhafield. But the problem was he needed more to make a documentary. For this purpose, British filmmaker Polly Morgan went undercover to record Michael and his followers in Hawaii. She described this experience as, "The leader is a powerful and manipulative personality, so there was fear and trepidation to be close to him and his new group of cult members." As a result, the documentary film Holy Hell came into being.
I've been watching the documentary on the cult. It's called Holy Hell. It's so fucking crazy. I've been watching it. I've watched it 3 or 4 times to try to find the angles for the bit. Yeah. Because the guy who ran it was a gay porn star who was also a hypnotist.
It's such a powerful combination.
All he wore was Speedos and eyeliner. And this dude ran this cult for 20 fucking years.
What happened to Buddhafield? Unlike most of the infamous cults, Nothing actually happened to Buddhafield even after this documentary was aired on CNN. Currently, the group's leader, Michael, continues to live along with his followers in Hawaii, and even after loads of sexual abuse allegations against him, no action was taken whatsoever. One may wonder why no one from the group has ever pressed charges against Michelle, but one of the group's ex-members answers this question as, "Legally, it's hard to prove because none of us were underage, you know, and you have to explain how this happened and that we were really brainwashed. And I think people also, psychologically, you have to understand that we were this family, and it's like abuse happens all the time in families, and nobody presses charges on Grandpa or Uncle Jim because he's part of the family. And so it took us a long time to separate ourselves psychologically from him, and he had trained us to protect him. He had programmed us to protect him." The group now has lost most of its devotees, but there are some who still believe in the spirituality of their teacher. Michelle, after the documentary was aired, strictly shunned all the allegations and continues to live freely among his followers. I'll meet you soon with another video. Until then, adios.